Welcome, my friends. It is Thursday, March 8th, 2012. This is one of the most important editions of InfoWars Nightly News ever. Something beyond treason has been committed against our republic. The Pentagon, the President, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the Secretary of Defense have all told Congress they have no authority over war. And not only is the President a dictator, but the United Nations and NATO is his boss. This is a coup d'etat against our constitutional republic. We have detailed reports at infowars.com that we're going to be covering here in just a moment. Then Webster Griffin Tarpley, after the news headlines, is going to be joining us. He's been to Central Africa. He's been to Libya. He predicted 3.5 years ago in the Obama deception that there would be an occupation of Africa through the pretext of humanitarian reasons. Here's a clip of what's coming up in that interview.
5 years ago, the campuses where Invisible Children is now recruiting and getting money were hotbeds of anti-war, anti-Bush Cheney, pro-impeachment.
Now they're taking the leftover to make them pro-war.
Exactly.
The new anti-war activism is proxy war, proxy state, civil war, genocide, and the new trendy thing is to support new genocides because there's some phantom guy with 500 followers in the jungle somewhere. Let's kill another 7 mil. What a genius psyop to go into the foundation-controlled university left that has been sitting on their hands when it comes to anti-war and actually get them clamoring for war using different forms of propaganda and using a new boogeyman when the globalist stated agenda under State Department Memorandum 200 is genocide in Africa. That is coming up, and I'm going to give you a breakdown of the players there in those areas of Uganda and other areas coming up here in just a few minutes. And then John Corbett, the engineer, who has had over 1 million views in the last day of his video proving that the body scanners are a total fraud. He's now had media attempting to talk to him, being threatened by the TSA. And, of course, they've banned and restricted his video on YouTube. Incredible information documenting the abuses and federal power grab of the Total Sexual Assault Bureau, known as the TSA. That is all coming up today. But first, let's get into high treason and beyond. I got up this morning. I hadn't seen yesterday's congressional testimony. I went to the Drudge Report. I went to infowars.com, and I saw the Breitbart headline, Panetta, international permission trumps congressional permission for military actions. Then I watched, we have a clip of that coming up here in a moment, a 7.5-minute compilation and couldn't believe it. Then I went to C-SPAN and watched over an hour of the raw footage. It's worse than the Breitbart headline. They actually say in there and are belligerent to the Senate over and over again. He says, well, you know, the Congress declares war. The Congress funds war. The Congress controls and commissions officers. And they just say, no, the UN and NATO gives us our authority. So it's worse than just the president saying, I'm a dictator like Julius Caesar in 49 BC and invading Rome with the military. At least he was Roman. They're saying, we take our orders from the UN and NATO, and there's Congress under law. And by the way, Walter Jones of Carolina and others have introduced legislation in the Senate to begin impeachment proceedings against Obama. So this is a big deal, but it's getting almost no mainstream media coverage. There it is. Resolution calls for impeachment of Obama if Obama does not seek war authorization from Congress. And you can go to Representative Walter Jones' site right there, top link. And he explains that it is a high crime and misdemeanor, is treason, and then he sources the Constitution. And that's LaRouche's site actually copied over what he had said, but you can actually go to Walter Jones' own site and read that right there. Scroll down and I'll read you what he said. Expressing the sense of Congress that the use of offensive military force by a president without prior and clear authorization of an act of Congress constitutes an impeachable high crime misdemeanor under Article 2, Section 4 of the Constitution. Go look it up. Whereas the cornerstone of the Republic is honoring Congress's exclusive power to declare war under Article 1, Section 8, Clause 11 of the Constitution, now, therefore, be it resolved by the House of Representatives that the Senate concurring, that is the sense of Congress, expect in response to an actual or imminent attack against the territory of the United States, like ICBMs coming in. The use of offensive military force by the president without prior and clear authorization of an act of Congress violates Congress's exclusive power to declare under Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution and constitutes an impeachable high crime and misdemeanor under Article 2, Section 4 of the Constitution. We actually have a copy of that bill that I covered on the radio today. It is there. The Senate's now signed on. We're going to play you a clip of that, then we'll get into some of the other news on that front. But here are some of the amazing exchanges that took place yesterday that are unprecedented. Even when Lincoln basically set himself as a dictator and arrested members of Congress, he wasn't doing it under the pay of foreign powers. This has never happened in 235 years of this country. This is espionage by foreign agents.
We worried about international legal basis, but nobody worried about the fundamental constitutional legal basis that this Congress has over war. We were not asked, stunningly, in direct violation of the War Powers Act, whether or not you believe it's Constitution. It certainly didn't comply with it. We spent our time worrying about the UN, the Arab League, NATO, and too little time, in my opinion, worried about the elected representatives of the United States. Do you think that you can act without Congress and initiate a no-fly zone in Syria without congressional approval?
You know, again, our goal would be to seek international permission, and we would come to the Congress and inform you and determine how best to approach this, whether or not we would want to get permission from the Congress. I think those are issues we would have to discuss as we decide what to do here.
Well, I'm almost breathless about that, because what I heard you say is we're going to seek international approval, and then we'll come and tell the Congress what we might do, and we might seek congressional approval.
No, well,
I want to just say to you, that's a big dish. Wouldn't you agree? You've served in the Congress.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you agree that that's would be pretty breathtaking to the average American? So would you like to clarify that?
But I've also served with Republican presidents and Democratic presidents who has always reserved the right to defend this country if necessary.
Hit pause. Back it up about 10 seconds, and it goes on and on. I watched an hour of this morning. And notice, they say, we might seek it if we feel like it. Last year, Obama launched the Libyan war, and we have links to that in our articles, to his statement. He said, look, I don't need Congress. I have the UN. So he's not just saying, as president, I can do this, which is treason. He's saying, I have the UN, I have NATO. And it goes on, and the senator is like, well, I'm breathless. I mean, our law, Congress commissions the officers. Congress funds it. Congress gives the president a declaration of war authorization and says, here's the mission. Now you're the commander-in-chief in real time making decisions within our authorization. Like, okay, go have war with Germany. Go have war with Cuba. But here's the war. Here's the aims. Now you execute with your war cabinet. Not just go in and do whatever you want. And by the way, the UN said we could. So let's go back to this unprecedented coup d'etat against America. And they're just seeing if they can get away with it. And if enough times they launch wars against Libya, Syria, whatever, and just Congress goes along with it, like Obama did last year, pushing this, and now they're doing it again, then the precedent's set. And that's what they're doing. Here it is.
So would you like to clarify that?
But I've also served with Republican presidents and Democratic presidents who has always reserved the right to defend this country if necessary.
But before we do this, you would seek permission of the international authorities.
If we're working with an international coalition and we're working with NATO, we would want to be able to get appropriate permissions in order to be able to do that. That's something that all of these countries would want to have some kind of legal basis on which to act.
What legal basis are you looking for? What entity?
Well, obviously, if NATO made the decision to go in, that would be one. If we developed an international coalition beyond NATO, then obviously some kind of UN security resolution would be the basis for that.
Coalition of. So you're saying NATO would give you a legal basis? And an ad hoc coalition of nations would provide a legal basis?
If we were able to put together a coalition and were able to move together, then obviously we would seek whatever legal basis we would need in order to make that justified. I mean, you know, we can't just pull them all together in a combat operation without getting the legal basis on which to act.
Who are you asking for the legal basis from?
If it's obviously, if the UN passed a security resolution as it did in Libya, we would do that. If NATO came together as we did in Bosnia, we would rely on that. So, you know, we have options here.
We have options, and Congress isn't part of it. You see, the private 6 mega banks that issue the currency and credit of the planet out of a black hole, out of la-la land, they are already telling Europe, you have no sovereignty. It's transferred to this private corporation that takes you into receivership through fraud. England has 80% or more of its laws made by unelected groups in the euro. And so it's the same thing. He's saying, I go to NATO, I go to the EU, I go to the UN. And here is the Senate and the Congress, who are the bosses, who we elect, America. And they're going, you don't go to us? And they're like, no, we go to NATO or the UN. And the senator's like, come on, this is going to be a big issue. And Panetta and everybody just says no. And the general behind him sitting there with just total arrogance. And they had Dempsey on there saying the same thing, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. You can go watch the clips online. It is unbelievable. And they just say, no, you don't give us the authority. We might want to come to you, maybe, if we feel like it. This is how liberty dies, with a whimper, not a bang, if we let it. Our articles on this: Pentagon launches desperate damage control over shocking Panetta testimony. The United States has ceded control of its affairs to international bureaucrats, and they spin it and go, well, it was misinterpreted. We want the UN to give us the orders, and we think that's the authority, but we'd like Congress to get on board. No, Obama said last year, Congress has no say. Just like Congress is a bunch of traitors, because they're part of the problem, ceded the NDAA power to Obama that he demanded to secretly arrest and kill Americans and launch war anywhere in the world as a global declaration of war without congressional approval in the future. Unprecedented. Here's another one. Coup d'etat, Pentagon and Obama declare Congress ceremonial. And that's what this is. Congressman Jones introduces a bill that would subject Panetta and Obama to impeachment. Yeah, look, impeachment's one thing if you've got a power grabber. But what do you do when foreign corporate interest? So we're used to fighting Mussolini or Stalin or stuff like that. These aren't guys in clown outfit, dictator outfits, that look like idiots. These are corporations and lawyers that come in. The New World Order is a corporate takeover. And they've got their corporate takeover artist, Panetta from the CIA, former director with, files on all these people, most of it made up crap, and hit teams. Most of the Congress is corrupt, and he thinks he can just barrel in there and say, hey, shut up. You work for us now. You understand that? I mean, my God. He says, oh, NATO and the UN, which now have run the euro and are enslaving them. It's global domination by a bunch of crooked corporations who want to take all our property, who want to break up our families, who want to force prescription drugs on us. They're a bunch of they are the worst wannabe dictators I've ever seen in history, okay? I mean, these people are out of control. And it's not like you can have Operation Valkyrie like the Germans did trying to kill Hitler. It's not like there's one bastard son of a bitch who's got to be dealt with. It's a whole crew of crooks that set up a giant, unconstitutional, global, out-of-control system. They exempt themselves from all the laws. It's too complex for the average person to get. And so they just get away with murder, but they may have gone too far, waddling in to those corrupt senators who at least want their power. And that's where the founders were geniuses, separation of powers. They knew that the Congress would be jealous of its power with the president. That's why there's checks and balances on the judiciary, the legislative, and the executive. And the biggest check is us. But let me tell you, I've never seen anything like this. They usually build world government, unconstitutional military operations quietly. But I hate to use this on a family show, but it's all it is. It's like when a dog goes and pees on a smaller dog. I mean, basically, Panetta just stood up and urinated all over the Congress and said, you don't count, I go to the UN, I go to the World Trade Organization, I go to the IMF, I go to the World Bank, I go to NATO.